Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I want to begin by thanking my colleague from Utah, Representative Malloy, for introducing H.R. 9165, the Public Land Search and Rescue Act. Just like her home state of Utah, northern Minnesota is home to vast public lands, including the Superior National Forest, the Chippewa National Forest, and Voyageurs National Park. Northern Minnesota is home to vast public lands, including the forest that I just mentioned. Unfortunately, several times a year, our local law enforcement units have to respond to search and rescue calls and other medical emergencies on these federal lands, and our local residents and taxpayers cover the enormous cost. Every year, some of these search involve the tragic loss of life, unfortunately. Just this past May, 2 Minnesotans tragically lost their lives while canoeing in the boundary waters within the Superior National Forest. The brave men and women of the St. Louis County Search and Rescue Squad and other volunteer fire services in the area spent weeks on the search and recovery for these individuals. Ultimately, the cost of this search and rescue mission totaled around $150,000. According to the St. Louis County Rescue Squad, burned through a huge chunk of their annual budget, which is only $450,000 a year. That's $450,000 annually to cover all costs for all calls throughout the entire county, whether they be on federal lands or not. The St. Louis County Rescue Squad exhausted 1/3 of their annual budget on one single call. And it is ultimately St. Louis County taxpayers that had to cover these costs, and local taxpayers when their volunteer ambulance service or rescue squad goes out as well. Representative Malloy's legislation is an important step in ensuring communities like St. Louis County, which are ultimately responsible for search and rescue efforts on our federal lands, are properly compensated and are ensured that they will have the funds to continue their normal operations outside of these missions. Sheriff Glover, I want to thank you for your service and the work you do to keep the people of Kane County safe and all those who travel to Kane County. I, along with you, have worn the uniform, one of just a few in Congress. Of the search and rescue missions your agency takes part in on federal lands, what percentage of the incidents involve Kane County residents and taxpayers?
We've done some research on this lately, and I would say I can estimate it at less than 5%.
Okay. Do many of these incidents involve Utah residents, or rather individuals from out of state?
Both, and also foreign travelers on a fairly regular basis.
So your taxpayers are paying for people inside and outside the county that need help, and including foreign visitors that are visiting the national parks. Would that be correct?
That's correct.
You know, while all visitors to our federal land should be able to enjoy our vast public lands safely and should be able to access emergency care in the unfortunate case it is needed, I have concerns that the residents and taxpayers of these gateway communities are forced to cover the cost of these search and rescue missions. What kind of impact does this have on local communities, and what kind of impact does it have on funding for other local essential services?
Yeah, you know, in a county like mine where we have a lot of visitation from tourists, we like to take care of the tourists. We like for them to come
Absolutely.
to our area. We like to care for them while they're there. But the cost does get to be too much for local residents. As we tip into property taxes, for example, or sales tax funds that would normally fund other programs, it gets to be a burden that we just can't handle.
I think that I think you said it well. You want it safe for every visitor, regardless, right? But I think we have what we're getting at, and Representative Malloy understands it. We have to be able to help supplement or offset the cost to the local residents, because the only thing you can do, or one of the only things you can do, is raise property taxes to cover those search and rescue missions. I think it's an obligation under this piece of legislation that allows some assistance, some financial assistance to recoup for the time those rescue squads and volunteer fire services in the remote areas are out there, answering that call for duty and helping their citizens. I'm Mr. Chair, I'm very happy about this piece of legislation. And just so you know, I also authored an amendment to the House FY 2025 Interior Appropriations Bill that does something very, very similar to this, to be able to make sure that we can get the coverage for those those counties and those taxpayers that are paying for that. But again, we want it safe for all, and I appreciate your service. Law enforcement is a noble and honorable profession, and thank you very much. And Mr. Chair, I yield back.
Gentleman yields. I now recognize